Wait, I just want to let you know it was on TV.
You made it to the big time.
We have contracts?
If you're walking through, you got to say a pledge of allegiance on the way through.
Respect our country. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
It's,
Hey, folks, I'd like to, just a brief moment for Mr. Steve Chuck, who lost his father a few days ago, and I'd like to take a moment of silence in his behalf. And then Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you. Stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag,
The United States of America, and the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Number two, any public participation? Hearing none, move on to item 3, approval of the meeting minutes dated July 13th, 2022.
so moved, the meeting of July 13th, 2022.
All in favor? Anybody?
Aye.
Right.
Second, Steve Shuffler.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't-
He spoke up, I heard him. All right, for a application sequencing. So we had a little bit of a, I'm not gonna call it an error, but we had a little bit of issue last month with, and Matt, you're gonna talk about this later on. We have to make sure we're doing the sequencing correctly. Now, the state puts out a document guideline on how to sequence approvals for the different agencies within a municipality. And the first one goes to wetlands. The second one goes to planning and zoning, and then the third goes to WPCA. So Bill, we kind of like, we're gonna bypass your, just let yours move through, because it's kind of a process that we kind of messed up on when we redid our application. On the top of the application, it should say, have you received approval yet from planning and zoning? Somehow when we redid that application, they got removed and it just says, did you go to planning and zoning? Well, we don't want you coming back 2 times or 3 times because P and Z didn't pass it. So what happens is, and next month, we're gonna do a public hearing for it, just so it's out on record that we're gonna follow that sequence that the state of Connecticut is asking us to follow the sequence. And the first one is in wetlands, planning and zoning, and then us. So we're gonna let yours go through. We're gonna change the application. Matt's gonna talk about it when he gets a minute, so we'll follow through on that. So anything on application sequencing?
Mike?
Your number, yes.
Oh, sorry. If you wanted to mention it now, we did have updated language on the application directions. If you'd like to read those out loud to see if everyone agrees with them.
Yep, if you got them, go ahead.
Yeah. John, would you like to read those to everybody?
Yeah, with a photo. I don't know if I checked that, Mike.
Good. Hi, everyone. John Rulo with Weston and Sampson.
Can't hear
Hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. John Rulo with Weston and Sampson. So as you just mentioned, we did update the language for the application process. Item number 1 on Form WP 0402 has been updated to read: the applicant shall provide the approved Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission land development plan to the WPCA as part of the application to connect to the city's sanitary sewer system. This step is crucial to avoid full resubmissions and unnecessary rework of the application to connect at a later time. Exceptions to this review sequence may be granted on a case-by-case basis by the WPCA Commission.
Mike, what do you think of that terminology? So they're basically forced to submit after the P and Z approval, and then if they, some weird reason they want to do it out of order, they need your approval ahead of time before they.
So then
Just-
we're gonna change that little box that used to say, has this been reviewed and approved by P and Z? And then Rick Schultz used to put his initials in that little box. Are we still gonna maintain that same thing?
If you want to, we can. The issue becomes if say, with a lot of these applications, we have to submit a revised sewer connection application form because the applicant doesn't complete the calculations properly. So then the issue becomes that Rick Schultz would have to, we have to obtain a signature a second time. I guess it's not the end of the world. But what we're really saying is like, we could certainly include a checkbox. Has this been approved by P and Z?
Well, we found that useful in the past because and that's why we actually, years ago, we changed that language and made it a simple little box. I like the language on the second page on the
Yeah.
procedures, but that little box is the first thing we're gonna start looking for is, Bill, did you get sign off from planning and zoning? And if so, please make sure somebody from planning and zoning signs it and or provides the documentation from the meeting or from P and Z that they approved it.
Yeah, then okay, we'll put the box back.
I want to keep that box. I want to keep that box here because it's right on the front page and it's easy to see quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, so let's do
Absolutely.
that.
There's a second modification that we've made to the document at the end of it, where we added language to describe, basically just quoting the city ordinances about what the difference is between types of residential dwellings, between a efficiency, a studio, apartments, and multifamily houses. So we just quoted that. I don't know if you want to hear John read it, but we're just basically say where in the statute it is, and then we just repeat the language so it's clear as can be how we hold the standards for each applicant.
Do have copies of everyone.
Yeah, John, be great.
Yeah,
Why don't you hand-
I got something to look at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hand them out.
That's a good clarification too, because
That's what
always,
we're looking for, that clarification.
yeah, I think yep.
That way we won't have an issue like we had on the Hummel Avenue applicant a couple months ago.
Yep. Thank you.
Nice, Matt. Nice, John.
I'm giving that credit to John. He did that.
We'll take it back. No, thank you, Matt.
So Matt, item number one, as you and I spoke and Ernie, application process, item number one. That's, I appreciate the verbiage that we spoke about, and that's good, but it doesn't tell us anywhere that it's approved.
Right.
We're just telling Bill, it's got to be approved, but what if Bill doesn't read that line and decides to come in, or somebody decides to come in and submit it? Bill, I'm just using you as an example. You're sitting here. You know, if somebody decides to come in and say, well, I didn't read that, that's new, which we're going to have a public hearing just to make it clear next month. I would like that box on there. It's a simple, really quick on the top. Yep, it's signed. It's somebody initialed it or somebody said yes, and it needs to be initialed by somebody in P and Z.
All right. Yeah, we'll make it happen.
All right, perfect.
There's some ambiguity in the language from the first paragraph to the second paragraph. John, if Ashley goes over it with it.
And this is draft. We handed this out. We didn't stamp it draft, but this is still a draft document. So
The chairman can move on with the meeting. We'll just link that there's some ambiguity in there, and we could look at it after the fact.
oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, this is perfect now to look at and talk, and then I would like everybody to look at and just have a comment for next week, but that's actually, I like this.
And there's some subtleties that Ernie's going to want to include, and we haven't talked a lot about it yet, and we'll make sure we include those as well.
Fine tune the thing.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on it?
No, sir.
Budget worksheet 4B. So we do have the final. I looked at it quickly, don't have any real questions. I got a couple notes on a few of them, but they're nothing major. Maybe Bill, maybe you and I can talk, or Ernie. We can talk. A lot of paper here to look at. Anybody else want to comment on the budget, or you want to? I would recommend we look at it and write some notes down as I did, and then we can talk about if there's anything critical for next month.
Fair enough. Mr. Chairman, you want to, should we give the floor back to Matt for the needs at the plant? That was item 4, that's on your list.
Did I miss one?
Yeah, you jumped one. It's not your fault. It was just like put into communications on the agenda.
What was it?
It's number 4, Weston and Sampson sewer plant task summary. Matt, you want to take that if the chairman wants you to?
Yep,
This, you have this one?
yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I
so,
shoot you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that either. So what we did is we've been tracking the needs at the plant for a long time. And the most important needs in order of priority, we put them together on this kind of the plant summary task list that everybody has. We've been meeting with the guys at the plant about it a couple times over the past several months. So we can go over the list really quickly. But basically just at the very highest level, and I could drill into more detail than you're going to need. So I'll try not to do that. But if you have questions, ask. The most important need is there's an electrical conduit repair at the that provides the power to the auxiliary blower building. There's basically rainwater that's getting into the main conduit. It's a 40 volt, 3-phase, like, I don't know, 2000 amp service. Water is getting in there, just pours out into the electrical cabinet into the basement. So we got to figure out how to stop that from happening. That's a pretty important thing to first identify and then come up with a pretty good solution to stop that. It's a safety concern. The second task item.
Matt, quickly on that one, are you gonna put this out to bid, or you're gonna try to do it with the in-house electrician?
So what we're gonna do is the first thing we're gonna do is look at it and probably draw up a little plan sheet showing how we're gonna repair it. It's probably gonna be like an under drain and maybe some sort of waterproofing around that flexible joint. And then after that, yeah, we'd probably just put it out for a small little bid.
Okay. Is it coming through a roof boot? Or you don't know?
To the ground into
Oh,
a flex connection.
okay. All
Flowing
right.
into a large
Is it-
box.
It's like a galvanized steel flexible joint on a conduit, and somehow it's leaking through that.
Okay.
The next item is the sludge storage tank. The brick veneer on that system, on that tank, it's basically pulling away from the concrete structure. This concrete tank itself, so it's becoming a hazard where if someday someone's going to walk by it, and the brick's going to let go and it's just going to fall on them. So we have to look at do we want to repair it, or do we want to just take it all down? Because it looks like there's some spot repairs out there already, but this problem continues to happen. Actually, this is kind of John's past life is building veneers and things like this. So he actually knows a hell of a lot more about it than I do.
Mason, John?
I worked kind of facade restoration in New York City.
Ooh.
So
We got the right guy.
this was the bread and butter.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was making my head spin with everything he knew about it. So he'll be out there on that one. So the next item down there is the tree clearing. We basically need to follow the right steps and go through the right channels so we can clear the trees along the riverbank by the plant, because they're overgrowing quite a bit. It's becoming, I don't want to say hazardous, but it's certainly concerning to see them kind of hanging over all the plant processes and hanging over the walkways and stuff like that. So we really need to cut those back. It's probably hasn't been done since the plant upgrade, so it's well overdue. Let's begin putting bid documents together for that. This task 4 used to be the highest priority, which is to come up with a plan to replace the wiring between each SBR tank and the blower building, which is where they all terminate, because the wire insulation is the wrong type of wire insulation. It's all cracking and moisture's getting in there, and we're concerned if we try to pull new wires through there, or even over time, if it continues to degrade, we're eventually going to start losing twisted pairs for sensors that control the whole treatment process. So we need to overhaul that. That's we didn't have enough money when we did the plant upgrade project several years ago, so we kind of let that sleeping bear lie. But now it's time to get in there and fix it on a planned basis instead of as an emergency basis. The following item, the sludge process study, task 5. The sludge processing costs are going absolutely through the roof in Connecticut, and you can blame anything of a multitude of reasons why, but we need to look at seeing if there's what we can do to manage those costs. The plant with the upgraded system does generate more sludge, and it should, because it's working better, but we also have to figure out how do we manage that, how to try to minimize the cost. Is there a way to make it so we can operate the sludge thickener less while getting thicker sludge, and then what the impacts are on that? That's kind of it's a pretty standard study for treatment plants. Usually you only do them during plant upgrades, but we need to look at the sludge processing system separately.
So you have full volume at 4.2 MGD. Is that a standard? You have to do the processing study based on the max at the plant?
Yes, basically the plants for the sludge processing system is, I would say it's operating at full capacity right now, and it's just barely able to keep up with what we're taking off the tanks. So this kind of goes back to we had to upgrade the rest of the plant to handle the actual wastewater strength coming in versus what it was designed for a lot less. So now the sludge processing seems to have been designed for a lot less than what it really needs to be for a 4 MGD plant. So if the capacity if we keep using more and more of the capacity at the plant, we keep getting all this new development, and then eventually we're going to fall into a situation where we can't keep up with the sludge the main process is generating, and it's going to be we're going to lose control of how the process works. We can't control the plant by wasting excess sludge. So to fix that, we need to kind of plan ahead a little bit and say, if the sludge production doubles when we go from 2 MGD to 4 MGD, well, what's going to happen with our equipment we have now? How are we going to handle that? We can't have 40 trucks a week pumping out sludge. What are we going to do instead? That's what that does. That's what the study looks at.
That's 4.2. We're averaging less than that, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So whereas with the previous upgrade and sort of now, in the previous upgrade, the plant was at half of the hydraulic capacity, but it was right at the entire nutrient removal capacity. This was a couple years ago. So we solved that problem, but we didn't touch the sludge system. The sludge system is operating at 100% of the sludge removal capacity, even though the plant can still double in wastewater flow in the next 20 years. So that will become a problem. So now's the time to look at it. The next item down is basically it's a pretty important need. The locker rooms are in the basement of the admin building. They're kind of in the corner right next to the grit dewatering system, and there's some other really stinky processes down there. So the guys, there's a lot of moisture in the air when the guys hang up their freshly laundered uniforms. They come back to put them on, a day or two later, they start to get all moldy and mildewy. We need to really move that locker room upstairs. There's also, it's not a comfortable place for two guys to shower and change at the same time. So there's a place upstairs we've identified to basically move the locker rooms up there, give them a little more space. It's a much better atmosphere for lower humidity and things like that. So we're going to look at that. They don't need bathrooms. They just need a new shower and a couple new lockers, a couple benches.
Apple's fine.
Go ahead, man.
Okay, sorry. The chlorine contact tank still gets a buildup of scum. A lot of times the scum's buildup is happening because it's difficult to tightly control the amount of sludge at the bottom of each SBR tank. There's a period of time each year where we can, Ed and Garrett can very tightly control the amount of sludge in the tank, but in the summer when the sludge growth is too high, you tend to get a little overflow of some scum, which gets trapped in the chlorine contact tank, and it just kind of sits there. It's very difficult to remove it because the mechanism they have in there it was kind of like the SBR tanks. Like you have to have the water level at the highest point, and then one of the operators has to be out there and throttle basically the launderer channel, open and close it just right, just to get right amount of flow through it. So we're going to look at replacing that scum trough with something that would work better. It's just at this point, it's a conceptual design. And then the final task, it basically opens up an on-call task. So if there are future needs for for an electrician, or you need my services down there, instead of trying to try to bill it to Ernie's task for the collection system, we can bill it directly to the plant for their services. It's easier to keep track of budgets that way. And that's all would be an as needed basis.
Are these listed in order of need?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously task one is the most critical,
Right.
what you're saying.
We feel so, yeah.
Okay.
You don't know where electricity goes.
Yep. You don't want a locker room?
We do, but I mean,
So Matt, let's talk about money for a minute, budgeting. How easy is it for you to put a budget next to each one of these so we can, again, it's going to be a swag. You know what a swag is, right?
Sure do.
Can you do a swag?
Actually, this will be a WAG, not a swag.
That's fine.
Yeah. We'll put that together for you, and then for next month's meeting.
Yep,
And
that would help to see what you're anticipating, and then what we, what we
Where
have.
budgets are.
Yep, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Matt or John on this?
The budget thing that the chairman brought up is a good idea, but since I've been on the commission, we've never ever talked about these things getting repaired or fixed. And I like, before I go into some more of this, I'd like to know more about some of the areas that I don't care about the locker room. I know enough about that to go yes or no, but the other stuff, I'd like to have some more information, like a work session, so we know what's going on. It kind of ticks me off that I've been on it all this time, and we got eight serious things wrong that we haven't fixed. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming our consultant or the guys at the plant, but I would have liked to know about this stuff ongoing rather than hit me with 8 things or 9 things at one time. And what the hell are you guys doing? You haven't done anything for, and not that that's happening. This is the first I've heard about it, but it's very upsetting to me. When I was in education in Shelton, if I ever brought 8 of these eight things that I needed to the Board of Education, I would have been fired. Because these are ongoing, and I think we should have addressed some of these things for you monetarily, more than one year at a clip.
Sure.
Especially things that are serious. The tree cutting and the locker room, we could take care of. I have no problem with that at all. But the serious things that you need for for the operation of the plant, we should talk. I'd like to have a work session or one-on-one, or somebody show me what's going on so we can know.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know if you're interested in maybe walking through the plant and actually seeing these things and being able to touch different, well, you don't want to touch sludge, but
Absolutely.
then that way, a lot of these issues, the only issue that's kind of has never changed was the control wiring to each sludge tank. But the other issues I think have more just slowly been growing worse and worse over. It's like an old roof on your house. You're like, yeah, it's an old roof, and then suddenly it starts to leak a little bit, and then it leaks a lot, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a problem. We should fix it. So a lot of these have just been growing concerns, and now we're at the point where we need to address them. But I really like your idea of either going to the plant and actually looking at these things, or discussing it further and with photos and details. I think the plant visit might be a good choice. We have a small group.
Matt, you want to set up a time with Ed and Garrett
Yeah.
and let everybody know?
How much interest is there from the board?
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay, good. All right, we'll set up a time.
Matt, item number one, I mean, that's like an emergency. That thing should be addressed like yesterday.
Mhm.
I don't think this is something that should be waiting time for a bit. This is something that needs to be aggressively attacked. I mean, before somebody gets electrocuted down there, or you blow up the whole panel or the whole neighborhood, you blow a transformer right up the pole with something like that. This is something serious. It should be addressed yesterday, right now, not waiting weeks to figure out who's going to go do it. I think it's something that needs to have the utmost attention and be very aggressively pursued. It's my personal sentiments.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to present these items without in a kind of a calm fashion. But you're right, it should be addressed sooner than later. So yeah, I could certainly talk with the guys at the plant, see if there's a way we can push that one a little quicker, or what can we do in the meantime. You're right.
Water and electricity don't mix well.
Not at all.
All right, so Matt, you're gonna set up a meeting, let everybody know,
Yes.
and we'll stay on top of task one.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
Anything else on Matt's report? Closing out item 4, nothing else?
Superintendent's report.
4C.
I'm sorry, 4C, superintendent's report.
The water pollution control plant report for the period of July 2022.
Sure.
The dry month, obviously. Our average daily flow was 1.9 million gallons per day, our average. The peak flow was 2.1 million gallons per day. We were in compliance with all our permit limits. Our effluent total nitrogen was 65 pounds per day. We had no lost time due to accidents, no first aid cases. Our incident months are now 43. Our safety training was heat and hydration. Our chemical consumables were the same. We used approximately 2,300 gallons of sodium hypo. No noise complaints. We're up to 118 complaint-free months. No state issued odor complaints.
Hey, Ed, real quickly, a question, we talked about it earlier in the, on item number 5. So we talked about the actual MGD is 1.9. I don't ever remember the average being above 2.5, no? That sound about right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's because of the dry weather, our flow is
Right.
very low.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ernie's work has helped also. By whether we have no state issue voter complaints. At the pump station or the treatment plant. Now have 48.3 months. Reduced removal from the pump stations for the month of July. Total of 690 pounds. Excuse me, 490 pounds. Or 440 pounds, so that's 50 pounds less than last year, at the same period. Our preventive maintenance schedule was the same. Our corrective maintenance,
Let's go back to grease removal for a minute. Pete, is there anything that you want to comment on grease removal for July or halfway through the year?
Like Tom used to say, it follows a yearly pattern. In the summer, we go down, because it's like, you know, the households are not generating grease. And then the restaurants you would think would be busier, but they got grease traps in them, where the households don't.
Yeah.
So they're only telling us something. I was studying that actually and saying, geez, it seems to follow the same pattern for June, July, August, and then watch in September, it starts picking up.
No, part of the problem is we're targeting the wrong population.
Yeah,
It
that's-
should be
we said that.
residential and it should be commercial, but you can't, we tried it and it's just, you know, grease in a can and we send so,
Yeah, it just.
It doesn't- it's-
Unless we got a way to refine it to the point where we can say, okay, you know, Mr. Jones's house is generating grease. You know, we can see it in the pipes, you know, type of thing. And we don't have that capability, but that's, you know,
and it'll be the first one, Mr. Jones will be the first one to call to tell us he's got a clog.
yes, exactly. We've had that happen on forced mains.
Yep.
Where people are dumping rice and other things down their tanks, you know, for chopping up. And it winds up at the plant eventually, but, you know, Ernie can tell you that, we saw one, well, from Buddington Road. And the entire grinder pump for the force main was full of rice. This is like the second time it happened. It's like, we have no control over that, unfortunately. There's no fines or penalties. It's something we should talk about, I think, you know, a little more extensively, like, because that's.
Well, when we've done the smoke test in the years past, you're supposed to have fines and penalties. I don't recall if we've ever collected anything.
Yeah,
Because people, for the most part, when they find out they're wrong, they fix it.
yeah. That was for the downspouts, the rain
The
gutters.
downspouts,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we did smoke tests, yeah. But like I said, it's following a pattern. It's usual pattern, I should say.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, want to keep going there?
their corrective maintenance. Sealed up a outdoor electrical panel at the River Road pump station.
Sealed up, it's not a NEMA 4 panel? I mean, sealed up, it's not a NEMA 4 panel?
It's just an outside panel for where the pump connects to the building. The metal, and we're getting false seal failures. Moisture was getting in there and it was, we sealed it up. Now we have to figure out. I think it's because it's outside, in open air, it didn't have to be NEMA 4.
Okay. So how you doing with parts on the Beard Sawmill pump station?
10 months to get the first set of parts in, those went into a pump. Got the second set in, those are going in the next pump, we're waiting for one more set. Taking anywhere from 8 to 10 months to get it. Parts.
Go ahead. How about the generator?
We had an advance warning that the UI was going to repair a line by the plant. We transferred the generator power during that period and it went very smooth. There are no issues. CR work schedule, all the CRs are currently online. And for future work, all equipment, data checks and return as needed. Overtime management schedule was as usual. Other than very low flows. Out of there.
Any questions for Ed or Garrett? Hearing none, we'll move on. 5A, application 22-108, 740 River Road. Matt?
Yeah, so John's in person, so I think he can step you through the review of the applications, and then when we get into detailed questions, I'm absolutely available to help answer. So John, would you like to go through 22-108 for everybody?
No problem. Again, John Rubo with Weston and Sampson. So our review of application 22-108, plan development at 740 River Road. After review, general recommendations as per the intermunicipal sewer agreement between City of Shelton and Town of Stratford. The proposed flow from the townhouses would be less than 150 gallons per day per person, which would not be considered excessive or unusual. However, because the land use and zone is changing, this application will require review and additional approval from Stratford Wpca. In addition to this, the proposed medical building and the supermarket that are being put on site would be considered excessive and unusual connections, which would also require additional approval from the Stratford Wpca. Additional general considerations, applicant must sign the application for approval and connect. This will put the application to connect process and procedures prior to the start of construction. And the are to follow all directions of the City of Shelton Sewer Department during construction. With regards to the grinder pumps that were specified on proposed plans, they had them indoors. However, we would recommend that each residential unit have an outdoor grinder pump, either with the Liberty pump or equal, installed in an exterior precast concrete manhole. Typically, indoor grinder pumps we don't consider acceptable for new construction. Along with this, we recommend the installation of an alarm control panel. In the event of an extended power outage, they can switch over to emergency power. Be connected to 40 volts to minimize any inrush. Any complaints from lights flickering when the pumps turn on. Provide a stainless steel double check valve on each service stub. And install the pumps with the top of the crane elevations above the 100-year flood elevation. With regards to the low pressure sewer layout, we recommend, just given kind of how they're proposing the lines are running, that all of the piping be made out of SDR-11 HDPE, just for a little bit more robust sewer lines. Maintaining a minimum 4-foot depth cover. All the low pressure laterals crossing stormwater recharge chambers must be buried at 24 inches below the bottom of the stormwater chambers. We're also recommending that some of the proposed flushing connections be installed between residential units 6 and 7, as well as 16 and 17. But there are approximate stations on the plans there. As well as having the lines not cross the existing 48-inch storm pipe located at the northwest of the medical building. One of the cleanout manholes that is currently called out at station 5+15 should be moved to station 7+50. At the grinder pump station that is currently proposed at the side of the medical building should be moved to the north side. As well as increasing the low pressure sewer to a 4-inch diameter between station 0 and 7+50. With regards to the grinder pumps being installed at the supermarket and the medical buildings, we recommend that they have a minimum of 3 and 4 cores respectively. just to give them a little bit more resiliency, just in case you have a failure, you have some backups. With regard to the gravity sewer, recommend that it provide a core drill and rubber sealed watertight joint connection at the new penetration into the existing gravity sewer manhole. And with this new system, we're requesting that they provide an access agreement to the city of Shelton, which will allow for future connections between those listed stations to propose low sewer parcels.
Why would you ask to have the hot water set below 150? Out of curiosity.
At those high temperatures, it can actually kind of liquefy some of the
Oh,
grease that will be coming
the
out,
grease,
so it
okay,
can
yep,
kind of
yep.
escape the interceptors. So you kind of actually lose the functionality.
So so then the next question is, you're asking them to set the temperature below 150. How does anybody guarantee that it's going to happen?
It's going to have
You
to
don't.
be a real.
Jim, is this your job?
Yeah.
Definitely got to make sure that all, trades actually communicate. So yeah, moving on. So with the outdoor grease interceptors, typically requesting they submit a discharge permit form, as well as follow tank sizing, sampling port.
Yeah, let me interrupt John real quick. So item number 6, the outdoor grease interceptor tank, is some standard language we really haven't had to use lately because we haven't had a lot of these types of developments. But pretty much it's just some standard considerations to consider in addition to listening to Pete. So it's just good to have these things listed so that way when their architect lays out their internal building plumbing, that they have separate drains for their kitchens versus their toilets, things like that.
So part B, actually have dedicated plumbing from the fixtures, not allowed the connection of food grinders, altars, discharging the interceptors, and also not allowed any domestic sanitary sewage to enter the interceptors as well.
So I don't know if Jim has, Jim must have some thoughts. Do you want to go over these?
Sure. Yeah, we accept all the comments and recommendations without exception. I just want to go over one thing on number 5, the access agreement.
Yeah.
And I assume this is what this is referring to is possible service to Auto Swage and the other lots farther to our north.
We're trying to avoid having 3 like low pressure sewers crossing your property in one way or the other.
Sure. And so I guess what I'm going to suggest or request that we do is we went through a lot of trouble, of course, to keep the force line out of the state right of way, because you can't do a private line in the state right of way.
Right.
But given this request, which we don't object to, I think we probably look at a redesign that does move the force line out into the state right of way, which is not a problem as long as it's a city accepted line, until we get to a point where we can do a junction manhole where we can extend north to those other properties, probably somewhere's around in front of the medical building parking lot or something in that location. And that way we don't have to worry about the adjoiners coming onto our property with whatever improvements we have, landscaping or parking lots or whatever, and they can just stay in the state right of way as well, which they have every right to do, as long as it's a city accepted main. So I'm just throwing that out for conversation.
So Jim, that's certainly a good thought. And that's something I think, Ernie and I should certainly discuss further.
Okay.
about whether that's, we keep the alive. I was trying to minimize making waves by asking you to move it back in a state road, because there are benefits to that. And then the connection becomes a lot easier because there's the whole concept of having easements goes away.
Yeah. Well, let me say for the record that whatever staff and you recommend, we have no objection. So, those are my comments, and we'll leave it to you and Ernie to make a determination on that.
So how about approval from P and Z, as we've been speaking earlier about application sequencing? You've got on here that this project you're requesting a zoning change. Is this a PDD? Going to go to a PDD, obviously?
Yes, this is a proposed PDD. It has inland wetlands approval for several reasons, but it's still pending in planning and zoning.
So you might be forced to come back to us also.
Well, yeah, sure. That's always a possibility. I mean, first possibility, bite my tongue, is outright denial. But the other sort of likely outcome is maybe a reduction in density and thereby a reduction in flows. So I'm comfortable that we're requesting sort of the maximum flow rates that are possible in this proposal. And if we have less, we'll certainly be providing Ernie and staff with the final design, especially since we are going to be looking at providing service to northern adjoiners.
And so the same general comment then, Jim, will be as was Bill and as will be with Manny, is that we're not going to deny this right now.
Mhm.
But to say that we're going to accept it, I think becomes a little bit more difficult for one reason. You're going to Stratford, so we have to have it right the first time. So I think the report is a starting point for you guys.
Mhm.
But what point do you come back? Just like Manny's going to probably have to, and Bill might have to, after Ernie and I having some discussions with P and Z, that it wouldn't make sense to accept this other than it's written up. Bill's is written up and Manny's is written up. So we have three of them right now on the table that we're willing to look at and accept and just look at and have sitting on the side. But if we accept it, then I'm not sure how we handle that. Right. Well, we accept them for review. The previous month, they're always accepted for review.
Mhm.
The thing we need to do here today is decide whether we're going to approve it, knowing that you're most likely going to have to come back. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. As I said, if we did come back, it would be for a reduction of impact to the
Right.
To the plant. But having said that, I mean, the only reason that we do this in this order now is that planning and zoning has sort of changed. Well, I guess to simplify it, we're looking for an indication from WPCA, not necessarily of a final approval. We're looking for an indication from WPCA of any clear issue that just prohibits this from any possibility of happening.
So I think
what I can read in the report. There's certain things that should happen.
So obviously, Jim, this report supersedes anything, but I think what we probably should do for these three applications is we accept them based on the outcome of P and Z.
Sure.
It's a conditional acceptance based on the approval of P and Z. It's obviously if P and Z says yes, then your approval goes through and we're okay with it. If P and Z says no, then you have to come back.
Yeah, that's
Well,
fine.
it's a conditional acceptance.
Yeah, that's perfectly acceptable.
Okay,
To
I
us,
mean,
yes.
because all three of you guys here, and unfortunately it happened to three, but I'm glad all three are in the room, is that we have to make this, right this ship here, and we're willing to help right the ship and make it a conditional approval. All right?
Yeah. Perfectly acceptable.
Yeah,
Chairman, ask a question. The supermarket that's proposed there, what is it like a Stop and Shop or Aldi's type size?
No, it's only 13,500. I can't,
Usually in every other supermarket we have, like Adams, White Hills.
yeah, exactly.
Internal,
Some,
internal grease traps in the building for
Yeah.
each department, like the deli department,
Mhm.
fish department. And then those internal traps feed the exterior one you have shown in the diagram. So are you planning interior grease traps in the market?
well, we're gonna design them as we absolutely need to satisfy WPCA in the building department. I mean,
So Matt, I don't know if you want to add that for, into what you have here. Okay, because again, I'm not familiar with, I would say Adams, maybe Ernie's better at this. Adams is what, 13,000 square feet? No, Ernie, at least.
Yeah, the point that when Mr. Swift is saying that they'll basically abide by any wishes the WPCA has, I think that's commendable. I think instead of making Matt jump through hoops, I think they should do what the chairman says. Let's wait for what P&Z
Right.
says and then worry about it at that time.
Yeah, in part, I'm not, certainly not defending one side or the other of this discussion, but it's also, it's probably to be determined who the supermarket's gonna be at this point.
sure.
But yeah, that's actually, that's a wonderful way to really control the grease, because otherwise each supermarket department, their department manager is gonna kind of blame the other departments for filling up the grease interceptor. So instead, they have their point of source treatment, and then we kind of have that catch-all in the parking lot. Yeah, I overlooked that. You're right, Pete.
So then,
Your chains like Big Y, Aldi's and all kinds of places, that when they have the floor plan laid out, they usually, we should add it here, but they actually just incorporate, like Big Y did it automatically. They have like 5 grease traps, I think, in interior grease traps.
And I've even heard of like say a Walmart supercenter on a septic, each department has their own septic system. So if they mess it up, the department's responsible, not the store itself.
so I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, that from the perspective of the supermarket, that might be true, but from the perspective of the health department or the Water Pollution Control Authority, my position would be, I don't give a rat's butt, what department screwed up. You guys are out of compliance.
True. Yeah, so I think Pete's recommendation for the standard operating procedure for the city is that for a facility like a supermarket, they have an indoor grease trap for each department, and then they have the final
All right,
grease.
Matt, let's move on.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I think, and based on anybody else here, I would be willing to give you this project, a conditional approval based on P&Z's approval, and you preparing and giving us that approval, and the grease trap issue for the supermarket. That's.
Yep. Mhm.
And I mean, it's on record. We can make some kind of motion to that. And Don, you're pretty good at making motions for giving a conditional approval based on P&Z approval for this project, and the issue on the discussion, the grease trap at the supermarket. So how would
Application 22-108, 740 River Road.
Make a motion to approve application 22-108 for the sewer connection application review to be approved based on the approval of our Planning and Zoning Commission, and to include the recommendation that individual traps be placed inside of the supermarket or to meet WPCA's requirements.
So it's a conditional approval. Jim, I think you're aware, obviously, we don't have to say too much more, but it's a conditional approval.
I understand.
Motion.
All right. Anybody want a
Mike.
second?
Can I have a point of discussion real quick? How does the mechanism work to get the Stratford approval for this project?
Once we approve it, then Jim's got to go to Stratford
Okay,
because they're the ones accepting the flow. We're just accepting the project and everything as it comes through our system. We obviously have to manage it through our system to get it to Stratford. So Jim's got to go to Stratford.
With Matt's point, I believe he's trying to make is that that should also be a condition that when Don makes the motion, that is stated in that motion, that it's based on Stratford approving it first.
We can add that as a,
I mean, P and Z, the trap, grease traps, and then Stratford, 3 things.
Correct.
That's a lot.
big hurdle, but it's a big project.
Well, it's
It's a process.
I think, it's a reasonable hurdle. I mean, it's what's got to happen for the project to proceed. That's all.
So in a sense, and I'm not telling you I disagree with the third one, but in a sense that if we approve everything, P and Z, WPCA, everybody else, it doesn't matter if Stratford says yes or no. What matters is we've approved it. It's okay. We're letting it come through our system. And if Stratford says no, it's like, okay, well, back to the drawing board, Jim, type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
I'm not sure.
I do think that just Commissioner Ramey should restate the motion. I don't think he was aware that about the position of Stratford. I think it should be stated in the minutes that the 3 things that with the stipulations that it meets the board approval in Stratford and the WPCA board that is, and then it passes the zoning board and is approved by the Shelton's planning and zoning board. And the third thing is that the applicant, which he's already stated numerous times, would follow the recommendations of the WPCA as far as the requires for.
However you want to word it, but to me, I think the third one is useless because he can't go anywhere until we say yes. And if they say no, then it's like, okay, not up. It's not our problem. Then he's got to go back again. So you follow why I don't really
I
agree with Stratford.
There's a process in
But
these.
we can put it in. Look, I'm not opposed to putting it in.
But if we put it in, doesn't it infer that Stratford has to approve this? And if they don't, we're gonna have to pick up the tab?
No,
No,
because
it's in the project.
No,
Stratford says no, the project's dead.
project's dead. Stratford says no.
Well, then
project.
we don't need their approval, so why do we have to put our motion?
That's my point. That's why I'm saying to you, I don't think
I don't-
we don't need Stratford.
If we're depending on Stratford, then I would do it, but if we're not depending on Stratford,
not.
and if they refuse us, it doesn't make, so why put it in? I would say. no.
That's my whole point.
I mean, I thought the
Again,
flow
I'm
was
not
going
doing-
to Stratford.
The flow is going to Stratford. We are not handling the
So
flow.
if they rejected,
Yeah.
It
The
doesn't.
project stops.
Project stops. It's beyond us. We've approved it. It's beyond us. We cannot go any further. And neither
You don't need Stratford. We need Stratford.
That's right. There you go. That's a good way to say it.
Let's move forward.
So let's move with the first 2 and strike out Stratford approval.
You don't have a second on the motion, though. Did you?
Bill, are you
second?
still on?
Yes, I am.
You want to make a second the motion? Did you
I'll
understand
second it.
everything?
Yes, I do. I'll second the motion.
All right. What's the motion, Bill? I don't want to make this hard, but you know what our attorney told us.
I understand that we conditionally approve application 22-108 based upon the recommendations by Weston and Sampson, plus also the recommendations concerning the grease system for the supermarket.
Right. That's close enough, Bill. I think Jim gets it and it'll be in writing Ashley will do a good job of making sure it gets put in the right way. Right, Jim? You all set? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
Eugene?
Aye.
Bill? That's
Yep.
4.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor? All approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
Jim, to make it so long. Bill, you should be easier now. You went through it all, Bill.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Application 22-109, 453 River Road.
I see
All
John,
right, John.
John's gathering his paperwork there.
Got him.
Nice to see you again. John Rubo, Weston and Sampson. This is for application 22-109. The proposed River Road residential development at 453 River Road. After review of the application materials, have some general recommendations. First, that the separate flow apportionment for the clubhouse and bathrooms / showers does not need to be included because these flows will be generated only by the property's residents. On the plan set provided to us, the prep room that is called out in the clubhouse is generic in nature, with microwave oven and sinks currently called out. But should this area become class 3 or 4 food serving establishment, a discharge permit form will need to be submitted to the sewer department, as well as a tree separator being installed. All product management practices will also need to be followed to meet state DEP and city of Shelton requirements. With regards to the pool filter backwash, this is to be limited to 20 gallons per minute. If it is to be discharged into the sanitary sewer system. And the applicant is to follow all directives of the city of Shelton Sewer Department, designate representative during the construction phase. With regards to the gravity sewer piping, new 4-foot diameter manhole will need to be constructed at the proposed sewer main connection with the proposed development. And we're requesting that the applicant will need to replace 585 linear feet of the existing 6-inch clay pipe between the manholes 006-415 and 006-413 with new 8-inch SDR 35 gas pipe.
John, when you stipulate those conditions for number 2 for gravity sewer pipe, could you make it clear that that is on Quorum Road, please?
That is correct. These are this is along Quorum Road, which abuts the property right now. Sewage pump station. Pump station will be privately owned by the applicant. Any municipal style solid handling submersible duplex pumps are required. Low capacity residential grinder pumps are not allowed. Maximum flow rate from this pump station is not to exceed 50 gallons per minute when both pumps are running. In addition, backup generator will be required to maintain pump operations during the power outages. And the applicant is to submit shop drawings for that pump station with design characteristics for review and approval by the city sewer department prior to any equipment being ordered or the
I'd just like to point out real quick that we also included the sewer collection system mapping for that area. So the very last page of this review to try to show where those manholes are located on Quorum.
Is this the project where there's a pool, a potential pool? Here it is, right here, I see it.
6-inch and now and Bill and this team, correct me if I'm wrong, agreed agree to change it to the 8-inch from manhole 006415, 485 feet downstream to manhole 006413. Matt, John? Anything?
Matt, you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set.
All right, so we should make the same conditional approval based, now this does not go to Stratford, so it's a little bit easier. Other than the fact that you're probably coming back. We'll make a conditional approval. I shouldn't state that, but
That's fine.
I'm just surmising, that's all. I don't know anything more than you do. I think let's do the same thing we did, we'll give it a conditional approval, and there's only one, is that you have to receive approval and then bring us the evidence bill. And then this will go through. If not, then obviously you have to come back.
That's fine.
All right? Mr. Ramey, since you do such a good job of making motions,
I make a motion that we approve the application, conditional approval application number 22109. For the approval, the approval of the zoning, planning and zoning commission. And based on our recommendations that came from Weston and Champton.
Eugene, why don't you make the second motion, a conditional approval based on P and Z?
I'd like to second the motion to approve based on
Conditional,
the conditional approval based on P and Z.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, vote to order. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Hope we don't have to do this again. All right, Manny the second, you're up.
Steve? That's you.
That's Steve, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, so Steve from Rose Steve's subbing in for me, so.
Can't hear you, son.
Okay. Steve from Rose Steve's Company. Represent, subbing in for Manny, Manny's usually here. This is for the application at 915 through 917 Bridgeport Avenue for the self-storage facility. And you had a presentation last week, so I'm here to answer his questions.
Matt, do you want to take it so Steve can stay at the podium, or you want John to do it?
Yeah, I don't mind doing it so Steve can stay at the podium, sure. So John reviewed the application for us. And for the recommendations, the gravity sewer piping, the applicant proposes utilizing the existing office building's 6-inch PVC pipe connection, which feeds into the city's gravity sewer line, which is along Bridgeport Avenue. So we just asked that this is pretty standard stuff. They locate the existing service connection and confirm that the gravity sewer piping is 6 inches, SDR 35 PVC, and then proceed with reusing it for the new building. The next item there would be that the benefit connection charge should be based on the anticipated site occupancy instead of just the gross warehouse, square footage. And because we've recently had another self-storage project where they would have 2 bathrooms, but it's really just for the attendant who stationed at the site. And then it might be a very sporadic use of someone who's bringing their storage goods there or taking them out, who maybe they might use the bathroom, but it's unlikely. So because of that, we have a revised application to connect form that we included with a lower calculated average daily flow, and then a lower benefit connection charge and a lower EDU.
Okay,
So
so this one, for the 24, okay, so this is the 200 gallons per day.
Yeah.
So did this receive approval from P and Z? That you're aware of?
I'm not aware of whether it has or not.
Okay. I wouldn't see why it wouldn't.
And all three are in the same boat.
They didn't receive approval, you
Yeah,
don't think?
all three are in the same boat, yeah.
Okay. So I'm okay with the reduced EDU count. Unless anybody else has a comment on it. That's Matt's change, which looks reasonable, 10 employees per day, 10 gallons per, 20 gallons per day at 200 GPD. Any other comments from anybody? Other than this one should be conditional also?
The PSD approval that you're talking about?
Mhm.
Let me just read it for the record, but the third recommendation is to follow the directives of the City of Shelton Sewer Department, designated representative and or agent during construction. Just for completeness.
Item number 3 you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yep,
Yeah, and those are our recommendations for this site.
okay. That one's pretty easy. Steve, would you like to, this is a conditional also. So we want to, based on P and Z approval.
I make a motion approval, conditional approval of application 22-110-917 Bridgeport Avenue with condition with, based on the approval of P and Z.
Receiving approval from P and Z. Ashley's good at this now. Second, anybody want a second?
second,
Second from Mr. Ramey to accept application 22-110 based on the condition that they receive approval from planning and zoning. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
aye,
Anybody opposed? Thank you. That's everybody, right? Bill?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. That's it for section 5. You don't have any other, thanks. No new business. One thing before we close out, and there's the attached financial statement, but before we close out, Ernie and I spoke about having, just to clear it up, having a public session half an hour before our meeting next month for the application sequencing. So it's out there that everybody understands that we have I'm not going to call it a new sequence, but kind of an updated sequence to our application to connect. I mean, it's critical that people don't come in here and waste their time. And many years back, that's when we added this verbiage in here because people just kept, P and Z said no, they'd come back. Then they'd come back and see us twice. And the comment was, well, you're wasting, it wasn't their fault, you're wasting our time. So we try to nip that in the bud, and I think it works pretty good, and somehow it just got mislabeled, but that's fine. We're gonna rewrite it, and then, so if you want it half an hour before the next meeting, call it 4 o'clock for the public hearing. I don't expect anybody to show up because we've never had anybody at a public hearing. Maybe 1 or 2 people.
It's got a question on the beginning of the meeting when Don was talking, were you saying that was something about going to the plant?
yes,
Oh, because I'd like to join that too.
they're gonna set it up, Matt's gonna
Matt's
set it
gonna
up
set it
with.
Okay, I'd like to attend if I know in advance.
If we have, since we're gonna have a significant presence at the plant with WPCA members, are we gonna have to advertise it as a special meeting?
And lunch. Ready to take care of lunch.
That's right.
Well, then since I know what's going on, I've been down to the plant to talk to these guys about it. I don't have to be there, so you don't have to call it a special meeting.
As long as we don't have quorum, is that how that
Right.
works?
The quorum's 5.
Fine, there won't be a quorum, right now, it's not gonna be a quorum.
Yeah, I doubt it. Ernie, Bill, were you planning on being
Yeah,
there?
Bill wants to.
Eugene?
Yes, yes.
Eugene? All right, so
And
I
this
will,
would be in a month from today?
well, I don't know.
Don't know yet.
We could get him in at any time.
We'll have Matt pass some dates around.
This would be separate from the scheduled September meeting,
Yeah,
right?
it can't be,
No, it won't be during the meeting. no.
Right,
won't be.
be another time.
it can't be,
Right.
so I won't show up, so don't bother, because I've been to the plant, I know, I've been talking to these guys about it, so I don't need to be there, so we don't have a quorum. All right, Matt?
Yeah, it's gonna be, we want to schedule it before the next WPCA meeting.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Anything else, German?
Move adjourned.
All in favor?
Aye.
Vote so moved. Thank you. See you guys next month.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your
Thank you, everyone.
time.
Have a great time.
You too.
You almost